Welcome into the Awesemo.com NASCAR Live Before Lock show. We're here to get you ready for today's Toyota Save Mart 350. Of course, we are road racing today here in NASCAR. We're going to break this one down for you. We are sponsored by PrizePicks. Later on in the show, we'll talk about some of those props that are over there at PrizePicks. Maybe you're like myself and really just took advantage of that free square from Jason Tatum the other night. It kind of correlated with some cross sports entries. So hopefully you took advantage of that one. Of course, as always, here on the Awesemo NASCAR Live for Lock show, I am joined by Chris Pennell. Chris, great to once again be speaking with you. Are your tire wear problems gone yet or what? Or is this still carrying on?
It hurts every single week. It seems to be I seem to have the highest owned driver that happens to have a tire issue. So it's been unfortunate, but I'm looking forward to the race today. We are road course racing. I saw someone mention in the chat that we will be doing several left turns today, but also have the occasional right turn today. So that is something to look forward to. I do enjoy Sonoma, and I think we have a pretty interesting slate. Lots of good drivers up front, like Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, that everyone wants to talk about, but lots of place differential as well. So it makes for some very interesting builds.
Like in terms of roster construction, because, we're always talking about, obviously today, not a ton of dominator points out there, 77 dominator points out there. So that's just not a huge focus. Of course, place differential. I know Phil was talking about on Twitter, kind of his mindset of how he's handling with place differential and whether or not you think that person could finish in the top 12. But, in terms of how are you developing those lineups with, are you trying to get someone, maybe it's at the top with Kyle or Chase that you see as potentially someone who could rack up a good amount of those dominator points?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on what kind of style of contest I'm in today. If I am playing cash games, I don't think you have to grab either Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson today because, if they have any issues at all, they're not going to end up being the optimal lineup, and they could definitely score quite poorly because of the lack of laps. But if I am playing tournaments, I'm going to roster a couple drivers, 1 to 2 drivers starting closer to the front that I think have the ability to win the race, mixed in with some place differentials. So if I'm playing cash games, of all the top tier drivers, I'm starting with Truex, and I'm getting, soaking up all those place differential plays that we will talk about in a little bit. But as far as tournaments go, I'm not setting up any dominator groups. Me and Jason, we're talking in the pre-show where I do like one group to not have Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott together, where maybe in a couple lineups you can do that in 150 max. But if you are doing that a lot in several lineups, I don't think it's going to be the best way to go with the lack of laps today. So we'll talk through it, several ways we can go today, and it should be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, especially you put those two guys together, it's going to really hamper what you can do just in terms of a roster construction situation. Yeah. We should note some news that has come out here about drivers going to the rear. You got Christopher Bell going to the rear for unapproved adjustments due to steering. He was starting 31st, not a big deal there. Eric Jones, he was also a steering situation. He was starting 33rd, no big issue. And then Cody Ware, which, to be honest about it, we weren't going there anyway. He has got multiple tech failures and must do a pass through on pit road, which, let's just be honest about it. If you're probably getting Cody Ware, I don't know, might need to restart that lineup there. But probably the most interesting one going to the rear would be AJ Allmendinger, who was starting 16th. And obviously he's going to be a topic of conversation today because obviously you look at the potential there. And I know you've talked about this week of he is definitely someone you like.
Yeah, I know it doesn't have quite the name value as guys like Larson, Elliott, Busch, Truex, but he in his own right is a very good road course racer. Honestly, could have won at Coda, the other road course that we were at earlier in the season, but he kind of got caught in between Chastain and Bowman playing bumper cars and he ended up getting spun, finishing around 33rd place. But starting in 16th, yes, he is going to the rear. I think that's a good thing for us if you're still playing him because it's going to drop his ownership a little bit, but you weren't playing Dinger to really dominate $80-100. So by no means is it really concerning to me. I still would want to load up on Dinger today.
For people that are new to NASCAR DFS, I know each and every week we get people in here in the chat that are very new. Road racing DFS, does your thought process change at all?
It certainly has to because last week at Gateway or any other tracks where we have like 200, 300, 400 laps, we usually kind of drill in the thought of you have to get some dominators in your lineup. And while you still can roster a lap leader today, you don't want to go overboard with it. Road racing, there is tons of strategies that teams and drivers will do. And sometimes you have no idea how actually well or poorly you're doing during the race. I remember there's some road course races where I cannot keep up with the strategies that everyone's on. So if you are doing really bad during any portion of this race, there's a decent chance it might just be strategy and you're not as bad as you may think you are. So don't get too happy. Don't get too sad on what you're seeing until a couple laps left in the race.
Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. Appreciate everyone that's in here on a Sunday afternoon. Of course, you're not subscribed. Also, be sure to do that. Hit that notification bell so you know this show is live here on the channel. Of course, we got you each and every day for coverage. Of course, tomorrow we'll have you ready for MLB coverage, NBA coverage, of course, all week long with everything going on in DFS. Great way to keep up with everything that is going on over here at Awesemo.com. So let's get into the top drivers here on the slate. So you got Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Ross Chastain, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, and Joey Logano. Those are all the drivers that are 9K and above over on DraftKings. So we'll start right off with Kyle Larson. He's starting on the pole, 10,600 on DraftKings, 13,500 on FanDuel. You know, we talked about the fact of, you know, there's not a ton of dominator points, but I mean, he is on the pole. And could this be a scenario where Kyle Larson just leads the majority of this race?
Yeah, I'm not typically one that likes rostering the pole sitter at road course races, but Kyle Larson will be an exception here. This is his home track. He dominated this race in similar fashion last year where he started on the pole at Sonoma, ended up crushing it. Not a lot of people wanted to play him because you don't typically want the pole sitter at a road course, but I mean, he had the best car in practice. Him and Chase Elliott, he's on the pole, seems to obviously have a really strong car. He's got good track history here. And like I said, it is home track if you want the narrative there. So if I had to pick between him or Chase Elliott, I will pick with Larson there just because he's got the better, start being able to lead the jump of the race. So definitely like Larson, not going to go there in cash games, but as far as a tournament play goes, I think he's totally fine.
You know, obviously, we mentioned about there's not a ton of dominator points up there, but you talk about, you bring up Chase Elliott, mention you really don't want to pair these two guys together here, but like, is there one you would prefer if you were going to sit there and say, hey, I think one of these two guys is going to be the person that gets the majority of the dominator points?
Yeah, as reflecting my exposures right now, it's going to be Kyle Larson for me, just because he's going to be on the pole, and I think he's going to have a bit of a stronger car here today. He's also been really strong at the road courses, a little bit better than Chase Elliott, and since last season. But obviously Chase Elliott's the best road course racer probably of all time. When it's all said and done, he's going to definitely be in the number one on the leaderboard when it's all said and done. He's only behind Jeff Gordon, another driver right now. But I mean, Elliott's been absolutely crushing it. But starting in second, I'm going to prefer Larson, but Elliott he's got the track record at road courses. It's just starting in second. I don't think he's going to be quite the lap leader that Kyle Larson is. And if Kyle Larson, you think, is going to win the race and lead the most laps, that's not going to leave much room for Chase Elliott to be in the optimal lineup, because for Elliott to be optimal, he's going to have to win the race and lead laps. But if I already think Kyle Larson's going to do that, that's when guys like Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr. start gaining positions and outscore Chase Elliott because he's not racking up those dominant points. So I still think Elliott's playable, but I definitely have a preference toward Larson.
Our third highest salary driver on the slate, that'll be Kyle Busch. He is starting 10,100 DraftKings, 12,500 on FanDuel. He is a little more popular today with what we're seeing in terms of ownership in comparison to Larson and Chase.
Yeah, I definitely really like Kyle Busch today. I think there's a chance he could end up being the top scorer on the slate. Very strong in practice, similar practice speeds to the two above, Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, but you also get an extra 10 place differential spots mixed in there, so he doesn't have to quite dominate like they do. And he has some more leeway for error. Like if Chase Elliott finishes third, unless he leads a lot of laps in this race, that's not going to get the job done. If Kyle Busch finishes third, that's going to be a great day from a DFS perspective. He's got great track history here at Sonoma. He's great at the technical road courses, and he's been amazing this year. I like Kyle Busch in all formats today, and definitely one of my favorite plays.
Next up, we have got Martin Truex Jr. He is starting 28th, 10,000 over our DraftKings, 13,000 on FanDuel. So here's our first potential big place differential guy.
Yeah, so if I'm playing cash games today, he's going to be the big name driver I start with. I still think I like Kyle Busch a little bit more because he's starting further up. That's going to keep some people away from him, but I think that makes him a better tournament play. He's also a lot faster in practice. Truex didn't really show quite the practice speeds, but I can't bet against Truex at a road course. He was optimal at Coda earlier in the season, and starting all the way back in 28th. You definitely don't need him to lead laps here to be optimal, and he's got 2 wins at Sonoma recently, the most laps led, the most fast laps, and has overall been dominant at road courses. So I have no problem at all with Truex. I think he's one of the safest plays on the board.
I think the question to me with Truex, just because he is going to be a very popular play today, when we're talking, I mean, obviously cash makes so much sense, but when we're talking about GPPs, whether you're, in a 20 max or a 150 max, of how much is too much of Martin Truex Jr.?
So I'm pretty spread out up top today. So I'm not going overboard on any of these high-end drivers. I'm getting overweight and going overboard on some of these mid-range guys, which we're going to talk about, because when you're looking up top for all these drivers, they're all pretty similar for the most part. I don't really have a strong stance here. I am not really getting past towards like the mid 40s as far as any of these drivers up top. And I'm the highest on Truex and Busch just because they have the extra place differential upside. But once you start pushing 50%, I don't really feel too comfortable with that with the expensive drivers this week.
Next up, you got Ross Chastain. He is starting 7th, 9,800 over on DraftKings. And obviously Ross has been having a great year.
Yeah. And the only concern here with Ross is he was getting into some feuds last week. If you ended up watching the race, him, Hamlin, and Chase Elliott, they were bumping and banging all the way back in like 30th place for a while. Chastain somehow still finished pretty well, but there's definitely some real beef there. And I will say Chastain starting 7th and Hamlin starting 10th. They're going to be pretty close to each other to start the race. So we'll see if Hamlin retaliates. I can't project and play as that's going to happen. So putting that aside, Ross Chastain won the race at Coda earlier in the season. He had a top 4 car in practice. He's been good everywhere this year, which is what I say each and every single time. Starting in 7th, if you want to get off the Truex chalk, I like pivoting right to Chastain.
Yeah, I remember watching the race last week, and NASCAR's like, all right, Danny, you made your point. You made your point. Let's move on with this race. Speaking of Denny Hamlin, he's next up. He is starting 10th. He is 9,600 over on DraftKings, but not getting much ownership.
No, he's not at all. And it's interesting because I realize the plays above him definitely look more appealing, but he's one of the better road course racers in NASCAR, especially at the technical road courses. In the past 10 races out there, he's got one of the best average running positions, one of the best average finishes, and top 5s, top 10s galore. The problem is, though, I just think guys like Chastain, Truex, Busch definitely look more appealing to me. And then with the way my roster construction is, I am very, very heavy on the 8K range. So I'm not really getting to a lot of these 9K drivers outside of Chastain. So just from a roster construction standpoint, not getting the much Hamlin. I have a little bit of exposure in tournaments, but it's not a lot.
Next up, you got Ryan Blaney. He is starting 14th. He's 9,400 on DraftKings, 9,000 on FanDuel.
And he's a solid road course racer. If you're looking at the past few races per him at them, he's finished 6th at Coda, 9th at the Charlotte Roval, and 2nd at Indy. But again, it's the kind of the same thing I said about Hamlin, where based on my roster construction, not getting to a ton of these 9K drivers, I have about similar exposure to Hamlin and Blaney. Blaney offers you the 4 extra PD spots. I will say over on FanDuel, he's only $9,000. So from a DraftKings perspective, they're pretty similar plays, but on FanDuel, I'm getting the more Blaney because he's $1,500 cheaper.
Then you got William Byron starting 20th, 9,200 on DraftKings, 10,000 over on FanDuel, which kind of like leads this question of like when you're talking about someone that's like kind of that general area, like where William Byron is, like, is it pretty much you got to think that they're going to finish in the top 12 to be optimal?
For Byron to be optimal, he's starting in 20th. You're probably going to have him contending for a top 5, top 8 at his price point, because you got to imagine, other drivers like Kyle Busch and Truex, they're going to have good races as well. So he's going to have to really beat them. And plus the 8K range is absolutely loaded with great plays. So Byron's in a tough spot. And if he's going to have some ownership today, I mean, he's not in a tough spot for where he's starting, but relative to where the other drivers are around him, I think he's a good underweight play because he's definitely going to gain some ownership. He's William Byron, he's cheap. He's starting in 20th, and he's a solid road course racer, but he tends to be very hit or miss. I could see him kind of riding around 10th to 12th all day, which is a good day DFS-wise, but I don't think it's going to be optimal and take down a tournament.
Then you got Joey Logano. He is starting 9th. He is 9,000 over on DraftKings, 9,500 over on FanDuel. So it means he's one position ahead of Denny Hamlin. Do you like Logano more than you like Hamlin?
I like him because he's cheaper. I have pretty similar exposure to them both. I have more Logano over on FanDuel because of the $1,000 discount that I'm getting, and I'm projecting to finish pretty similar at the end of the day. So for me, slightly into Logano because of the savings I can get.
Of course, this is the Awesemo.com NASCAR Live Before Lock Show. We got to let you know about an amazing deal we got going on over right now at Awesemo.com. If you're a new user of Also Plus Platinum, you can save 50% off your first month. That's right, 50% off your first month of Also Plus Platinum. This is for new users only. And of course, you can use the promo code NASCAR LBL, all caps, one word, NASCAR LBL. Of course, you can click the link in the video description below. It's the best offer that you can get over here to become a new member of Also Plus. Of course, get all the great tools and content we have over Awesemo.com. From the NASCAR aspect of it, like right up here on my screen, I got that top driver tool where I'm looking at a lot of different numbers on this one, obviously ownership, projection, but I'm also looking at ceiling and floor of what these drivers can do. Of course, when you're an Awesemo Plus member, gives you access to everything we got over at awesemo.com. So you got to take advantage of this. It's our absolute best deal, NASCAR LBL. And when you use that promo code, it lets everyone here at Awesemo know that you heard about it right here on the NASCAR Live Before Lock show. It's a great way to show your support for myself and Chris. So we'll move on to the mid-tier range salary drivers. So these guys in the 8 through 6K range, we have got a ton of drivers here in the mid-range here. So let's just start off with the guy that we know is going towards the back, but he was already starting towards the back. That's Christopher Bell, starting 31st, 8,900 on DraftKings, 8,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, so if you're wondering the poor performance in qualifying and practice, like we said earlier, he had an issue, which is why he's dropping to the rear. But assuming that's all fixed up, you have to assume he's going to run a lot better than where he qualified and what he did in practice. 20th in the 1 lap in practice, 19th in the 5 lap. Did a quick qualifying lap and took it right to the garage. But again, Christopher Bell is a really good road course racer. He's a winner at one back at Daytona. I believe it was last year, but finished 3rd at Coda early in the season. 8th at the Roval, 7th, 2nd. Like, he's got legit top 10 upside here. He's in a Joe Gibbs car. He's below 9K. He should be a lot more expensive than this, starting in 31st. As long as he doesn't wreck and the steering issues don't happen again, I mean, Christopher Bell should be a lock to be close to being optimal today, and a lock in cash games.
Of course, also going to the rear for issues, AJ Allmendinger, 8,800 on DraftKings, 11,500 on FanDuel. Now, the difference with him is he was slated to start 16, so obviously there's that. That's got to be a talking point.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that's going to drop his ownership a little bit, but the only time I'm ever concerned about drivers going to the rear is when I expected them to lead like stage 1 for the most part. I'm not expecting that from AJ Allmendinger. I don't really care about dominant points that much anyway. So him going to the rear, I think it's fine. I mean, as far as tournaments go, I think you could still play him in cash games, really. He's a better play over on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel because $11,500 is pretty steep. I still think it's fine because it's Allmendinger. I had some people bringing up his poor finishes recently at road courses where he finished 33rd at Coda and 38th at the Roval, but that's just issues that are out of his control. He won in Indy, and honestly, he could have won the race at Coda earlier in the season, but like I said earlier, got caught up in Ross Chastain and Alex Bowman's mess. But Dinger's a guy that I'm going to target. He had a fast lap in practice, and he's just a road course ringer, and I want to be a part of it.
Then you got Chase Briscoe, who is starting 15th, 8,700 DraftKings, 8,800 over at FanDuel. Was a guy that we were high on last week, and unfortunately the tires became that issue.
Every single time the tire's an issue. Hopefully that does not happen this week, but he's great at road courses. Didn't show a ton of speed on Saturday, but if you were looking for a pivot off of the Dinger chalk, I mean, Briscoe's going to be pretty low owned, and I mean, he's obviously got plenty of upside. Honestly, he's got race winning upside at road courses. Didn't really flash it on Saturday, but I would not be surprised if he's kind of battling for a top 5 for the majority of the race, top 8. And I think he's a pretty good pivot play in the 8K range.
Then you got Tyler Reddick. He is starting 5th, 8,500 on DraftKings, 8,300 on FanDuel. I guess with a starting 5th, what is the path to being optimal for Reddick?
If you're playing Reddick, you pretty much need him to win or get like a top 2, and then some of these 8K range guys to fail, because yes, even if he does finish like 3rd or 2nd, you got to keep in mind you have guys like Bell, Dinger, Kurt, Cindric, Harvick that don't really have to get a top 3 to outscore Tyler Reddick here. So if you're playing Reddick, I would really try to plan on him being the winner in your lineup and then build around that. I don't really see the path for Reddick. It's not great. I have around 5% ownership today, and even then, that's just him getting sprinkled in at the end. I think he's a better play over on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, I'm not getting to a lot of. He just didn't flash a ton of speed in practice, 15th in the 5 lap, 17th in the 1 lap. He's fine at road courses, but he's going to pretty much have to win the race.
Then you got Austin Cindric starting 25th, 8,400 DraftKings, 11,000 on FanDuel. So on the FanDuel side of the equation, similar price to AJ Allmendinger.
Yeah, I took the approach on FanDuel. I don't think as many people are going to get to them because of those massive price points. I took the overweight approach there, hoping to get some leverage. And Cindric didn't really impress anybody on Saturday, 25th in qualifying, 24th in practice, but he's a very polished road course racer, not so much in the Cup Series so far, but in the Xfinity Series, he's a 4-time winner at them. He's got several top 5s, and he also has a couple of top 10s in the Cup Series as well, finished top 10 at Coda. Starting all the way back in 25th, I mean, he's got the skill set for road courses, and he's only $8,400 in a Penske car. I want to take my chances. I'll play him in cash games, and I'm definitely playing him in tournaments too.
Then you got Kurt Busch. He is starting 11th, 8,200 on DraftKings, 8,000 on FanDuel. And just give a little teaser, the Busch brothers are going to come up when we talk PrizePicks.
Yes, I do like them quite a bit today. Kurt Busch is in an excellent spot at his price point, and I like that he qualified pretty high because we can't play all of these differential plays. And I do think he's a pretty good pivot here, but he's got excellent numbers at Sonoma. He's a seasoned vet here. He's a seasoned vet at road courses, which is going to suit him well. And he's been running pretty well recently. And if you're looking at the overall numbers at road courses, the past 10 races, he's got some of the better average finish numbers, 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s. He was fast in practice, arguably has a top 5 car. So I'm loading up on the Busch Brothers today, and this price point seems a bit too low for Kurt.
Then you got Kevin Harvick, who is starting 23rd, 8,100 on DraftKings, 7,000 over on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's definitely picking up some ownership today. I personally prefer pivoting to guys like Austin Cindric and Kurt Busch over Kevin Harvick today. Not to say I don't like Harvick. He showed some speed in practice, 11th in the 1 lap, 7th in the 5 lap, and also like Kurt Busch, a seasoned vet here and has a really good track record. And I believe he had it was close to a top 10 finish at COTA, and finished 11th, 14th, 8th at some of the road courses recently. So starting in 23rd, definitely a guy I can get to, but with his ownership, I might end up being slightly underweight or pretty close to the field.
Then you got Alex Bowman starting 19th, 7,900 on DraftKings, 7,800 over on FanDuel.
So I thought I was going to be a lot higher on Bowman heading into the weekend because he's a very good road course racer. Finished second at COTA, had one of the better average green flag speed ratings. And if you're looking at his numbers at Sonoma, he's got a couple of top 10s here. And if you're looking at the overall track record at road courses, the past 10 races, he's got 9 top 15s, the past 10 races at them. So quite consistent. And starting in 19th at his price point, it would seem like a steal, but he was pretty slow in practice. Ended up putting up a P23 and a P24 in the 1 and 5 lap. There's other guys I prefer to Bowman, but I still have above 15% today just because of the price point.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously is going to be a popular driver today. Yep. So hear what you said there makes me think you want to be underweight on the field here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I still like him, but if he's going to be at the ownership that we're expecting, I don't think it's worth it.
Then you got Daniel Suarez, who's starting 8th, 7,700 on DraftKings, 7,500 on FanDuel, of course, starting here in the top 10.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it was a very similar play to Kurt Busch. He doesn't have quite the road course success or experience as Kurt Busch, but he's had a very fast car this season. He was very fast at COTA, and he's starting pretty high up. So not a lot of people are going to want to go that route. And he's right beside Eric Jones. He's going to be one of the most popular plays in the slate, starting back in 33rd. But P5 in the 1 lap in practice, P11 in the 5 lap. I think Daniel Suarez is a guy like his team at Ross Chastain. They can kind of hang around the top 8, top 5 for the majority of the day. And Suarez is a guy at $7,700, fits nicely in my lineups and is a really good pivot.
And then you got Eric Amarola, who is starting 21st, 7,300 on DraftKings, 5,500 over on FanDuel.
Yeah, not getting done too much Eric Amarola. He has had some good finishes at road courses, but overall not really a guy I tend to target at them too much. 31st in the 1 lap in practice, 25th in the 5 lap. I'd much rather play the 2 drivers above him, Eric Jones and Daniel Suarez.
Next up, you got a driver that, let's just say, no one's really getting to this week. Michael McDowell, who is starting 4th, 7,100 on DraftKings, 6,300 over on FanDuel. Is basically the path to him being optimal is simply he's got to win this race.
He's got to win the race, and the chances of that happening are pretty slim. So I feel pretty comfortable doing a full fade on Michael McDowell here. Like, I'm looking at the past 6 finishes for him at road courses: 13th, 16th, 30th, 21st, 30th, 28th. He had a great qualifying run. I'll give him applause for that, but I think that's about as good as it's going to get for him this weekend. I can only really see him falling back.
Similar analysis on Cole Custer, who's right below him, who's starting 6th.
I could maybe play a little bit more Cole Custer, but it's both slow in practice. 29th and 26th for Cole Custer. It's starting at 6. It's just, I see no chance for him to be optimal.
Then you got Austin Dillon, who's starting 13th, 6,900 on DraftKings, 5,800 on FanDuel.
Austin Dillon's intriguing just because he's been a lot better at road courses in recent memory than he was to start his career. Because if we're looking at the past 6 races, well, past 5, excluding his issues at Indy, 10th, 15th, 15th, 11th, and 13th, which is pretty consistent because back in the day, Austin Dillon was a terrible road racer. So he's definitely gotten a lot better. The problem is starting at 13th, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for upside because if Dillon happened to finish in the top 15, I think he'd consider that a pretty good day for him. So I don't have much Dillon, talking like 5 to 8% today.
Then you got Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who's starting 32nd, 6,800 on DraftKings, 4,800 on FanDuel.
He kind of feels like a bit of a trap to me today because people are going to want to play him starting in 32nd, which I understand. Not much has to happen for him to have a good DFS day, but really slow in practice. 30th in the 1 lap, 27th in the 5 lap. If you're looking at his history here at Sonoma, I believe he's average finish at 26.7, running position not too far behind. Does have a couple of top 20s. He's fine to sprinkle in. Like, I have a decent chunk of Stenhouse just because he's starting in the back, but I'm not excited about it.
Then you got Brad Keselowski, who is starting 22nd, 6,600 on DraftKings, 4,500 on FanDuel.
it might be surprising to you, but I actually don't mind some Brad Keselowski this weekend. The RFK car showed some speed. Obviously, Chris Buescher, he qualified very, very well and also showed some speed in practice. But Keselowski's guy, he finished 14th at COTA early in the season. His price point is really low. He's got some decent track record here at Sonoma. Obviously, he was in Penske equipment back in the day, so obviously it's a bit of a downgrade now. But in practice, he looked pretty good. He had a top 10 car in the 1 and 5 lap and P3 in the 10 lap. So I don't mind getting some Keselowski at all today.
Then you got Bubba Wallace, who was starting 27, 6,400 on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel.
Not usually a driver I will roster too much at road courses. I will say he's cheap and very cheap over on FanDuel, $4,200 starting in 27th. And I think he can kind of limp his way into a top 22, top 20. I'm not a big fan of it. If he's going to be highly owned, I want to be probably underweight on that because he has an average running position here at Sonoma at 27th. Obviously, he's in better equipment now these days. Looking at his recent finishes at road courses, 30th at COTA, but then 14th at the Charlotte Roval last year and 13th at Indy. There's some upside here for sure. If he can get you a top 20, you'll be pretty happy.
Then you got Justin Haley, who is starting 18th, 6,300 on DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel.
So Haley's going to be lower owned than Bubba Wallace. I think he's a pretty interesting pivot. Haley did finish 15th at COTA, then 8th at Indy last year. And we like his teammate AJ Allmendinger. Obviously, Allmendinger is a much better road course racer, but Justin Haley's not terrible in his own right. And I'd say he's more likely to get a top 15 than Bubba Wallace is. He doesn't have quite the PD upside, but I don't think Haley's a bad pivot at all.
Then you got Chris Buescher, who is starting third, of course, missing last week's race due to COVID. So he is back 6,100 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel. But what you're talking about, a driver who's now starting third here in this race.
Yeah, heading into the weekend, I thought I was going to be pretty high in Chris Buescher, so he didn't qualify like he did because pretty good road racer for his price point. He's got 2 top 5s, 9 top 20s, and 5 top 15s the past 10 races. Problem is, starting in third, there is like no upside at all here. He's basically going to have to do what he did last year at the Charlotte Roval where he finished third. But even then, I could see a guy like Ty Dillon not scoring if he finishes 20th.
Then you got Joey Hand, who's starting 17, 6,000 on DraftKings, and the bare minimum 2,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I know he was a very popular play earlier in the season at COTA because he was much cheaper, I believe, and he was starting in the very back. Now starting in 17th, like he's a good road racer, but it's really hard to trust his equipment. Looks like he has about a top 20-ish car in practice, but I have my concerns with the Rick Ware car holding up over the course of the race. So not going to really have any Joey Hand for me. If you need a bare minimum punt on FanDuel, maybe you get there, but I really don't think you have to do that today.
Of course, this is the Awesemo.com NASCAR Live Before Lock Show, and we are sponsored by PrizePicks. You got to head over to PrizePicks.com. Sign up right now, or, of course, you can download in the App Store, the Google Play Store. Of course, use that promo code Awesemo as they'll match your first deposit of up to $100 when you use that promo code Awesemo. And looking over at the props that we have over there at NASCAR Day, I know you're really big on the Busch brothers today. Kurt, he's 33.5 as a fantasy score number.
Yeah, I'm liking that Kurt number a lot. I was surprised it didn't rise. When I bet Kyle Busch last night, it was at 45.5. That's now at 47.5. But for Kurt Busch, he's sitting at 33.5 right now. We're talking about a top 11 finish, which is what I'm definitely projecting for Kurt Busch. He's done that many times in his career, and I'd be very surprised if he does not get a top 11. So felt very strong about that number for sure.
And then, of course, you mentioned about Kyle Busch. You mentioned about you got it at 45.5, which is that's the thing over at PrizePicks. You got to go on early on the week, especially with NASCAR. Once everything's with qualifying done, you got to check this out. It's now at 47.5,
which is basically a top 5 from Kyle Busch. Now you could probably mix in a couple fast laps in there for him, which makes it a little bit easier. Maybe he gets up front at some point, but I do think Kyle Busch is definitely a contender to win this race. And if he does that, he's going to hit the over. So felt pretty good about that.
Of course, be sure to check out PrizePicks. Download the app in the App Store, Google Play, or go over to PrizePicks.com. Use that promo code Awesemo. They'll match your first deposit of up to $100. And, of course, one of the great things about over at PrizePicks is you can do cross-sports entries, which is something that I've been doing over the past couple of days with NBA and last night's MMA slate. So be sure to check out our friends over there at PrizePicks. Now we'll get into the low tier salary. So these will be the drivers that are underneath 6,000. First up, we got Ty Dillon, who's starting 34th, 5,800 on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I've got a lot of Ty Dillon today, and he's very slow on Saturday. 34th in the 1 lap, 30th in the 5 lap. Showed he was slow in qualifying too with his 34th place qualifying spot. So I don't think he's going to have a ton of speed, but he's just one of those guys that is usually slow during the race, slow during practice, slow during qualifying, but he just avoids attrition and finishes around 20th place. He finished 20th at Coda. And if he can just limp his way to a top 25 today, I would have no problem with that at all. Average finish at 21.5 at the road courses the past 10 races. If he can hit his averages today, that's a great day at his price point for where he's starting.
And obviously the other driver that people are getting to in this area besides Ty Dillon is Harrison Burton, who's starting 26, 5,600 on DraftKings, 4,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think he could be kind of sneaky today. He has one cup race as far as road courses go, but he finished 17th at Coda. And if he can contend for a top 20 today, he's going to be lower owned than Ty Dillon. I don't think he's a bad pivot at all. And he showed a lot more speed than Ty Dillon in practice. So he was 20th in the 1 lap, 17th in the 5 lap, and 5th in the 10. So I think Burton's definitely a guy that I wanted to get some exposure to for sure.
Scott Eckert, a road racer here. He's starting 35th in the Ford here, 5,400 on DraftKings, 2,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, it's just he's in such a bad car. It's the car that BJ McLeod drives, and it's obviously very slow each and every single week. Now, equipment doesn't matter too much at road courses, but this is still going to be a very slow car. 35th in the 1 lap in practice, 31st in the 5 lap. I think he could contend for a top 30. He did have a 26th place finish before, but I'd much rather get the Burton for $200 more.
Then you got Corey LaJoie, who's starting 30th at 5,300 on DraftKings, 3,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, LaJoie's had some bad luck the past 2 races at road courses, finishing 36th and 35th. But before that, 16th, 24th, 21st, and 18th. So starting in 30th, he's pretty cheap. You're just basically hoping he avoids wrecks. And if he does that, he should contend for a top 28, top 26, and that's not terrible.
Mm-hmm. Ty Gillen, he's starting 24th, 5,100 on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel.
Another driver that I think you can sprinkle in here. I'm pretty heavy on Ty Dillon, and I've got a decent chunk of Harrison Burton, but guys like LaJoie and Gilliland are ones that I can get to a little bit of. Gilliland did finish 16th at Coda early in the season. He was 21st in practice. So starting in 24th, you don't get quite the PD upside, but he's dirt cheap and he makes things work up top.
Then you got Josh Bilicki, who's starting 29th, 5,000 on DraftKings, 3,000 on FanDuel. I can see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I'm not doing the bottom 2 drivers here. Bilicki's just, if he was starting 35th, maybe. I don't think he's the worst road course racer out there, but starting in 29th, he's kind of capped on his upside.
And of course, Cody Ware, who is he's got a pass-through penalty. He's starting 36, 4,900 on DraftKings, 2,500 on FanDuel. I mean, look, not to rag on him here, but it's like in terms of a fancy perspective, why would you go there?
The only reason you would go there if you think it's mass chaos and 20 cars wreck out, which I don't think we're going to see at a road course. And for the record, Cody Ware not only failed failed pre-inspection twice, not even 3 times, but he failed 4 times. So he lost his crew chief. He has to do a pass-through penalty, and I think he lost like 10 points on the season. So it's not a good start for Cody Ware this week, and it's probably going to end quite poorly. So yes, he's starting just about dead last, but I can't do it.
And looking over at the betting odds on this one, Chase Elliott is the betting favorite to win this one, just under a 4-1 betting favorite here. Kyle Larson is 4-1. If you want to go down, is there somebody down here that you think's got some odds that you're like, man, that's kind of a sneaky little bet?
I wouldn't call it sneaky, but I just think it's a mispricing on Kyle Busch. So after practice and qualifying yesterday, he opened up at 14-1. I believe he's now down to 12-1, correct?
Kyle Busch is now at 10-1.
Okay, so it was 14. Now it's down to 10. So people are catching on, but I still think those are pretty good odds. Like, he was just about as fast as Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott in practice. He's amazing at Sonoma. He's been amazing this year, arguably the top driver. So I would definitely take those bets. Like, I don't think Busch should be too far off of Larson and Elliott's odds, and he pretty much is. So I would definitely try to get some value there.
Of course, we got 25 minutes left here in Live Before Lock, so we'll be answering your questions for the rest of the show. Be sure to line those up in the chat. We'll get to those as we go forward here. And, of course, I'll start right at the top of the chat to get in with it here. Says, I'm running with Keselowski today. I don't know why I feel like he's going to pull up strong for this one. We know your thoughts on Brad overall, but there is some place differential upside here.
Yeah, and starting in 22nd, if he can go lower on than Bubba Wallace and Ricky Stenhouse, I'd much rather be on the Brad Keselowski side there. I mean, at least he has had some success at road courses in the past, and so far in practice, he looks good. Like, he looks like he has a fast car this weekend. 9th in the 1 and 5 lap in practice and P3 in the 10. I'm with you there. I can play some Keselowski today for sure at that price point.
Nick mentioned about last night's fight. Nick, yeah, I didn't see that the co-main event 49-46. I thought it was 48-47, but it's gonna be something I gotta go back and watch again. JGT says, does Kyle Larson run away with this race?
If there's a driver that runs away with it, I would definitely say it would be Kyle Larson. It looks like he's got the best car. He's on the pole with his home track. He did it last year. Wouldn't be super surprised if he did it again. Is he going to lead the entire race? I don't think so. I think there's definitely going to be some strategy at some point that gets another driver up front. It's just a matter of if Kyle Larson can get back to the front. Because, yes, if he does lead half the race, that's a good chunk of dominator points, but still, it's not going to be a ton of dominator points. They're going to need him to pretty much finish 1-2, but certainly possible.
Let's go over here to scored. Dinger or Bell, DraftKings GPP.
And I want to go with Dinger because it's tournaments, but I still got to go with Christopher Bell because it's just he's starting 15 spots further back, and there's basically no downside with him today.
Yeah. Another one with Bell, 1v1. Andrew asking about Bell or Bowman.
For me, it's going to be Bell. Like, you can almost give me any driver versus Bell today, and it's going to be Bell. There's only a couple of drivers that I'd prefer over him.
Jay says, is Jones, Bell, and Truex locks at single entry GPPs?
For cash games, it would be a lock. As far as tournaments are concerned, that's a very, very chunky way to start. I love Jones and Bell. I have a hard time pivoting off of those two, but maybe you can get away from a Truex to go with like a Chastain or a Kyle Busch to get at least a little bit lower ownership.
When you were doing your single entry builds, did you find yourself kind of going a certain route in terms of how you're building lineups?
So I actually started with the mid-range. I start from top to bottom, but I already know I'm playing Jones and Bell. If they happen to be the first two guys to wreck out, whatever, I'll take the L this week, but I have a hard time seeing them fail. So I actually started with the mid-range, and then I started using my top-end guys and then just voted whoever fit at the end. So kind of a little bit different way to go this weekend.
But in terms of going with that mid-range, were you just more looking at from basically looking at the PD side of this equation?
Yes, for the most part, because I knew up top I wasn't going to get as much PD because I was already soaking up all the place differential in the middle. And then I kind of bypassed Truex just because so much ownership. So that's when I'm getting the guys like Chastain and Kyle Busch instead of Martin Truex.
DD throws out this. He says, I can see a scenario where Elliott or Larson win the race and aren't in the optimal.
Whoever wins the race is a very, very strong chance they're in the optimal. It's not going to be like a Talladega or Daytona where they can't pick up fast laps. The guy up front is probably picking up fast laps. Meanwhile, like at a super speedway, that's not going to be the case. So I'd say whoever wins stays probably in the optimal unless something crazy happens.
Stenhouse or Keselowski?
For me, it'll be Keselowski there.
Even with with Stenhouse starting all the way back in 32nd though, so you got two more spots.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be more appealing for people to go with Stenhouse, but I think Brad Keselowski actually has top 15, top 12 upside today, where Stenhouse I think can be battling for a top 25.
I mean, you mentioned a lot about the practice times from yesterday. Are you taking a lot into that in terms of developing your lineups?
It's not going to be the end all be all for me. Like I still like Truex, even though it kind of sucked in practice. I still like Bell, but when it comes to some of these guys that are very close to each other, Stenhouse seemed to really struggle yesterday, and plus he's not that strong at road courses anyway. I feel like Keselowski is going to be the stronger guy there, and I also think it's worth looking at his teammate Chris Buescher posting a really quick practice speed and qualifying as well. So I think the RFK cars definitely have a little bit more speed to show this weekend.
Vince, congratulations on your win last night. I was glad I was able to help you out there. Unfortunately, I just had some lines that just did not have the right combinations with some very low scores. Yeah, but definitely hit on some of those high-end ones that came in there. Both Busch brothers on FanDuel in optimal.
Certainly, I have a lot of both, so I would not be opposed to that happening. I have over 30% in my own personal exposures on FanDuel, so certainly possible.
By the way, I feel like this may be the first week that we're setting a record on Brad Keselowski questions. I feel like we just don't get a lot of Brad. Another one coming in here on Brad, a 1v1 situation of him or Eric Almirola.
Once again, it's going to be Brad Keselowski. I'm not sure I've ever been so pro Brad Keselowski on a stream, so I guess we're setting many records here, but it's going to have to be Kes for me.
Cash question, Kurt Busch or Austin Cindric?
It's got to be Cindric for me. I mean, just take the extra PD spots there in cash.
Okay. Blaney or Chastain in a single entry on DraftKings?
So Blaney will be lower owned, but I feel like I can trust Chastain a lot more. I mean, obviously what we saw at Coda was very impressive, and he was very, very strong in practice. So I'll definitely take Chastain.
See her, Hockey Freak Sean says, Bush or Harvick. Okay. Bush or Harvick or Bowman or Amarola or Suarez for last guy in. So, I mean, I'm not sure which Bush you're talking about. I'm guessing it's probably Kurt.
I think so. Yeah.
Just based on kind of the price range of all these drivers.
Mm-hmm.
But these are all guys living in that 8,000 range that you talked about. That's where you've been living at here today.
Yeah, I like all those drivers quite a bit, but for me, I'm going to give Kurt Busch the edge there. I really think he's got top 5 upside today and could be a sneaky winner.
Jake brings up a great point about asking about NASCAR tweaking the track a little bit from last year.
Yeah, so they're not doing the carousel anymore. They're running the chute, which we saw in previous years. So if you want to kind of throw away the past couple races at Sonoma, you can do that. But I mean, overall, it's not a huge deal. I'm just looking at overall like road course strength.
Dinger or Kurt Busch?
I have more Dinger I have just about 30% on both of these guys, but I guess with Dinger going to the rear, Kurt Busch has a somewhat easier path now, but it's very close. But I'll go with Kurt.
FanDuel, GPP, Blaney or Kurt Busch?
Still Kurt Busch for me, which sounds weird saying, but it's going to be the way it is today.
Let's see here. 2v2 situation for a FanDuel single entry. Chastain and Harvick or Kyle Busch and Eric Jones?
Oh, man. On FanDuel, I'd almost go with the Kurt Busch side there with Chastain, just because I just feel like the place differential with Eric Jones won't be as heavily needed over on the FanDuel side.
Charlie bringing up, he goes, can we play Elliott, Larson, and Kyle in the same lineup?
You can salary-wise, but I wouldn't do it personally. I think just choosing one of Larson and Elliott's the best way to go today.
What does the rest of your lineup look like if you go with those three? I mean, you're dumpster dive. That's stars and scrubs. I mean, that'd be my thing is, I mean, I get why you would want to go there, but what's the rest of your lineup going to look like?
Yeah, I just think the AK range is so strong to where stars and scrubs doesn't really look that appealing today too.
Yeah, I'm just tempted to see how much does that leave for average. Yeah, 6,300 average remaining per driver.
So, yeah, I mean, you could go like a Ty Dillon, Keselowski, Bubba Wallace route, but I'm not sure I want half my lineups having those three guys.
Yeah, that's really, I think every week we're going to have that question of, it's how low do you want to go?
Yeah. I think stars and scrubs is a lot better thing to do when there's a lot of laps because, guys that can accumulate dominant points to where the scrubs, yeah, it makes sense. But for a race like this, I'm pretty balanced for the most part. Like I have a lot of lineups where I just have Ty Dillon as my cheap guy, or I have a lot of lineups that, Keselowski or Stenhouse is my cheap guy. So I don't really like going with three of those guys down low.
Yeah. It's this thing that just came up in Discord and it says, talk about what we're doing with the Martin Truex chalk, mentioning that they're underweight in GPPs, but wondering if you should make them a part of the single entry main lineup.
I'm fine if he wants to be your single entry main lineup guy, but at the same time, please keep in mind, if you have Bell, you have Jones, and you have all those guys in there, you are building a very chalky lineup. So one's going to have to get cut out. For me personally, I'm more comfortable getting away from the Truex chalk than I am the Christopher Bell and Eric Jones chalk. So I feel a lot better pivoting to like a Kyle Busch and Chastain than I do getting away from Jones to an Almirola or Suarez.
Are you stacking any car manufacturers?
I'm not really doing that today. I don't think it's going to correlate as much as I really wanted to for the road course.
Dinger or Cindric in cash?
Cindric with the extra PD spots.
Sean mentions, he goes, I have one lineup with no one starting 22nd or ahead.
I think that would be fine for cash games. If it's a tournament, you're kind of pushing it because I think the main lap leader will be in the most likely in the optimal unless they happen to have an issue where they wreck out. So if you're playing cash, great. Tournaments, pushing it.
Good chance if that happens, I'll probably have that driver in my lineup.
Yeah, for sure.
Very good chance. Kyle Busch or Ross Chastain?
If salary's not an issue, it's going to be Kyle Busch for me. He starts a few spots further back, and I love Kyle Busch at technical road courses.
As you kind of look at it, of how you're projecting this race and what we're seeing with the ownership, is there something that kind of maybe jumps out to you at all?
Yeah, I think that mid-range, there's a lot of good pivots there because obviously guys like Dinger and Austin Cindric and Christopher Bell. Eric Jones are going to pick up a lot of ownership. But I like the pivots with the guys starting closer to the front with Kurt Busch and Daniel Suarez. I mean, they showed a lot of speed in practice, and they have the upside here. So just getting away from some of those real big, massive place differential guys to some of the guys starting closer to the front that you think can potentially win or top 5 is a pretty good way to go.
How much is too much to leave on the table on DraftKings?
I'm not leaving too much money on the table. Like I said, I am building pretty balanced, but I like to leave a lot of money on the table. You're really avoiding some of those 9K and up guys. But yeah, I want guys like Larson, Elliott, Busch, Truex, Chastain in my lineups because that's a big part of the way I'm going today because I think they are the 4 most likely drivers to win the race.
Of course, if you got any questions, be sure to line those up right here in the YouTube chat. Also in our Discord chat. I got the Discord chat up here on the screen, and get exclusive Awesemo discounts and the first crack at beta testing new tools and features by joining our Awesemo MVP text program. Sign up right now by texting MVP22 to 1-660-656-4417, and you'll automatically be entered to win a free year of Awesemo Plus Platinum. For more information, all you got to do is click the link in the video description below. You got to take advantage of that. Sign up for the Awesemo MVP program, texting program we have there. 2v2 coming here from Kenny says Bowman and Byron or Harvick and Cindric.
I'll go the Harvick and Cindric route. I mean, Bowman and Byron are fine plays today, but the other guys showed some more speed. Well, Cindric didn't show a lot of speed, but I love my road courses.
FanDuel GPP, Jones or Suarez?
Over on FanDuel, I'd almost give since it's a tournament, I almost be more tempted to go with Suarez there at lower ownership.
Christopher Bell or Dinger?
Christopher Bell for me.
In terms of cash, I think we all kind of have our go-to kind of cash games we play. Do you have go-to ones for you?
Yeah, I always just play the single entry double ups. I mean, they have it's got to be decent size too. I don't like playing any of the ones that are below like 100 entries because I think it's a little bit funky on the scoring. So I usually try to find large field single entry double ups.
Of course, I'm always trying to go over there cash. You want to do some head-to-heads? Another great way to do there in cash there if you want to do that. Sean mentions asking about Rex on this course.
There's always going to be some spin outs at road courses, but if I would not expect anything like a 5 or 10 car pile up or anything. I mean, is it possible? Sure, but it's not going to be like a massive wrecks like we see at high speed intermediates.
And don't I recall the tweaking of this track was about to try to get more passing?
I believe it should help a little bit for sure. I know the fans and the drivers do prefer the shoot, so I think that's how they should appeal to the guys actually running the track.
Yeah, that might help. Ty Dillon and Kurt Busch or Brad Keselowski and Eric Jones?
Oh, man. I guess I have to go with the second there because I just like Aaron Jones a lot today.
It just feels like based on some of the things I'm seeing in the chat and Discord and all that, it seems like Ty Dillon is really becoming that cheap play that everyone's looking at.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot. I had a lot more early in the day. I was getting close to 40% on Ty Dillon. I was like, well, that doesn't feel that great. So I bumped it down a little bit, but I do have a lot of Ty Dillon today.
I mean, how was that in relation to Harrison Burton, though?
Yeah, it was kind of where I had Burton down here, Ty Dillon up here, and then it kind of evened out a little bit more.
Did you make any particular groups in terms of how you were developing your multi-entries?
I did not make any groups, but we were talking about in the pre-show. If I was to make one group today, I don't think you have to do it, but it would probably be just having at least, or at most, one of Elliott and Larson together. But
it's also is probably one of those situations where you're unchecking people that you're just like I mean, Cody Ware, Bilicki, Corey LaJoy, Scott Eckert. I mean, was it more of those situations of like, or were you just saying, don't give me more than 2%?
So I only unchecked one guy today, and it was Cody Ware just because of the 4-time tech failure. Maybe he has a rocket ship. I don't know. We haven't really seen him on the track this weekend because he failed 4 times. Maybe that's something to think about, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I unchecked him. I have like 1 to 2% of Heckert and Bilicki, but outside of that, I wasn't getting anything else from scrubs.
Yeah. Wayne says you can only have one. This is GPP for DraftKings: Larson, Elliott, Kyle Busch, or Truex.
For me, it'd be Kyle Busch. I mean, he doesn't have quite the PD upside as Truex, and he's not up front like Larson or Elliott. I think he's right in the middle there, and I think he's one of the top plays in the slate.
Best DraftKings GPP play.
I would say Kurt Busch. I mean, he's right in that 8K range where there's so many PD plays, but he was fast in practice, great at Sonoma. I think this sets up really well for Kurt Busch to be a sneaky top 5 guy.
Kevin says 7K left with one spot to fill. Who is the best 7K and below driver to take a shot on? He mentions Harvick and Jones.
Well, below 7K, we are stuck with guys like Stenhouse, Keselowski, Bubba Wallace. I guess this is another pro Brad Keselowski comment, but I guess I have to go with him below 7K.
take a shot every say you say Bush. Let's see here. Stenhouse fine is the last guy in for a GPP on DraftKings.
Yes, he's fine. He's going to have some ownership because of how far back he's starting, but if he's a last piece fit guy, that's fine. I'm not building around Stenhouse today, but he's just kind of like that filler guy.
I mean, when you talk about those drivers who are 30th and beyond, is there someone that you look at and say, you know what, I think that guy's the better play?
As far as just overall, or some of the cheaper drivers?
Yeah, just overall. Looking at obviously because we've talked so much about place differential of looking at these guys that are 30th and above. We've mentioned about Eric Jones starting 33rd as one potential.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 are above the entire field there with Christopher Bell and Eric Jones. I think those are 2 of the top plays in the entire site. They're my 2 highest on drivers on both sites today. Or I think on FanDuel it might be somebody else, but he's definitely in the top 3. But especially on DraftKings, it's so hard to avoid Jones because if you're looking at that 7K range, yeah, Bowman's fine. Suarez is a good play in tournaments, but he's starting really far up. And then you're not playing Almirola, really. You're not playing McDowell. You're not playing Custer. He fits roster construction-wise perfect, and he's actually a good road course racer in general. So getting to a ton of Jones and Bell's in a similar spot. He's just a lot more expensive, but he's in better equipment.
Sean talking about taking Kyle Busch and Truex and putting them in the same lineup, but also throwing it out there. Is that too much chalk?
I think it's fine if you do that, but you have to keep in mind, I would try to stay away from at least 1 or 2 of the guys like Bell or Jones or Stenhouse or all those chalky guys. So you can play chalk, but just make sure you maybe instead of like a Bell Jones, you get a Suarez and Kurt Busch mixed in.
Yeah. AJ or Byron in DraftKings cash.
Oh, well, I think I know what lineup he's talking about because I was toying with the same idea. I think I want to go Dinger, but he is going to the rear. So you always have that in the back of your head. But I think overall at the end of the day, Dinger would be the better play. So I'll go with Dinger. Yeah.
I mean, I think like the question I think with Allmendinger is, I mean, okay, so he was supposed to start 16th. Now he's all the way in the back. Is, how quickly could he move through the field?
It could be pretty quick. And the thing is, I mean, some drivers would take different strategies that gets them up front. And honestly, I think at one point, I think we're going to see Byron probably riding in 14th, and then we're going to see Dinger in like 21st. Then he's going to keep inching closer towards Byron. Then at that point, it's like, well, why didn't I just play Dinger? Because he's already in the same spot as Byron. And I think at the end of the day, Dinger's contending for a top 5. Meanwhile, Byron's contending for a top 10. So
just pulling up Bob's Twitter to make sure nothing new has come down over here in the last. By the way, just tweeted the Clash is returning to the LA Coliseum in 2023.
I'm a fan of that.
Let's see here. Looks like nothing else. So that's good news. It's always good news when we're approaching lock and there's not much there in terms of that. So if you got any questions, line those up. And Wayne asked about Todd Gillen.
Not a huge fan of Todd Gillen, but he's just one of those guys you can kind of sprinkle in at the bottom end because it's like Gillen starting in 24th. I don't think he's too far off of a play at Corey LaJoy. I definitely think Ty Dillon, Harrison Burton look a lot better, but Gillen did show top 20 upside at Coda. So if you want to sprinkle him in, that's fine at his price point.
Jones or Bowman?
I think I have Jones projected higher. It sounds weird to say that, but yeah, I have Jones around 43 points today, and I have Bowman in the 30s. And I know over on the website, we agree with that as well. So I'm a fan of Jones there.
Is Chastain a must play for single entry in tournaments?
He's definitely not a must play, but he's someone I'm getting to quite a bit. So definitely I'm fine with him if you want to get to him.
Yeah. Dinger or Cindric last man in on DraftKings?
For me, it'd be Cindric.
Of course, you got a last minute questions, just a couple more minutes here left in the show. Was there a driver that you were surprised that you got to as much as you did?
Let me pull up my exposures here. I know there was a couple of surprises. I thought I was going to get a little bit more Larson or Elliott, so I was a little under on that. I wanted somewhere in the mid 30s. I'm in the upper 20s right now, so it was just because I try to bump up my Truex and Kyle Busch and Chastain more. So naturally, some guys got to fall. So I might be slightly underweight on those two. Not sure how great I feel about it, but as far as surprises go, I don't think we talked about Briscoe too much. I'm close to 20% on that. I feel like that's a decent overweight spot. And I am very low on guys like Blaney, Denny Hamlin, William Byron today. So definitely not hoping they do well today.
8-game mentioned, and I know he's taking down some big tournaments over the past couple of weeks. He says, how many drivers do you have over 50% on a 150 max on DK? He mentioned that he capped his at 45%.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you because my second highest owned driver is Christopher Bell at 45%, but I have one guy above 50, and that's Eric Jones, and he's sitting in the 60s for me. Outside of a wreck, I think Jones is probably optimal.
How many Kyle Busch Chastain lineups in a 20 max together?
Kyle Busch and I'm not sure I could give you like an exact number on what I'd want to do for that, but I have several combinations with that. And as far as the 150 max build goes, I couldn't give you the exact percentage, but I think that's a pretty good combo today. I actually have that combo, I believe, in a 3 max, so I'm definitely a fan of it.
When it says Suarez, does he actually have a chance at winning or top 5?
Yeah, he has a serious chance to do that. He showed several times this year, like he has legit speed sometimes. I mean, he's teammates with Ross Chastain, so it's not like their equipment's too far off or anything. Obviously, I think Chastain's a better driver, but Suarez has shown some real speed. 5th in the 1 lap in practice, 11th in the 5 lap. His odds in Vegas, at least after practice and qualifying, were 12-1, which is similar to drivers like Denny Hamlin, Chastain. So, I mean, he's got a legit shot, I think, today.
Chastain, Jones, and this is 3v3, by the way.
Okay.
Chastain, Jones, and Elliott, or Larson, Kurt Busch, and Bell.
Oh, I think I'd have to go with the first one there. The Elliott Chastain combination with Jones.
Yeah,
Chastain,
like Jones, and Elliott. I think also kind of, I'm sure a lot of people are having this thought of, if you're just going to put, if you're going to start your lineup going, okay, I'm either putting Larson or Chase Elliott in my lineup, I think I would probably go Chase Elliott.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm very even as far as my exposures to them goes. You get the extra PD spot with Chase Elliott. Is overall just dominant at road courses, but man, they're the top 2 cars for a reason. They're starting on the front row. I could easily see them finishing 1-2 today. It's a very much of a flip of a coin. I have a slight lean to Larson, but it's very close.
Of course, appreciate everyone tuning in for the Awesemo.com NASCAR Live Before Lock Show. Of course, we're here before every NASCAR race. Chris, any final comments you want to leave everyone with?
No, it should be a fun one today. There's many different strategies you can go with. And like I said, drivers are going to be on totally different strategies than others. So don't get too happy. Don't get too sad today because it could change quite a bit.
Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button as you get out of here for the show. Of course, you got to subscribe to Awesemo. Be sure to do that. Of course, we got plenty of great shows for you each and every day. You got video on demand. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you know when a new video is live here on the channel. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Awesemo NASCAR Live Before Lock Show. Thanks to our sponsor, PrizePicks, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good day, everybody.